Hi YouTube, I'm Morten, and today I want to sit down and talk to you about gaming mice and why I think that going lightweight is the best option if you are an FPS player that enjoys sweaty titles like Overwatch 2 and Apex Legends, just like I do. Now, for the record, I want to start this off by saying this video is not to bash on people who succeed with a heavyweight mouse. There are people out there who can pick up a G502 Proteus core and dome people with that 150 gram brick in their palms, but I don't think that's the play for most people. Now, when I say the weight matters, I think the weight matters because of Newton's second law of motion. The second law of motion states that once a body is in motion, it will require the same amount of force to stay in motion as it did to start moving it. What that really means in non-math terms or non-nerd terms is you are just unnecessarily straining two small muscle groups to aim with, those primarily being either your wrists or your forearm. These days, most mouse internals are exactly the same. Well, not exactly from the same factory, but spec to spec, pretty much the same. 1000 Hz polling rate, basically little to no DPI deviation, and wireless that is so good that it could honestly match or even beat out the latency of their wired counterparts. The exception here being, which is as of today, 1705.23, Razer, which has the capability to go up to 8000 kHz polling rate wired and 4000 kHz wireless, as well as having motion sync baked into the sensor of the mouse. For those of you wondering what motion sync is, I will link a video to Optimum Tech, who will explain it, in the description. But when we're talking about polling rate and stuff, I want to, reel people back in and be like, okay, listen, gotta tell you straight, anything above 100 or 1000 polling rate does not matter if you do not have a 240 or above hertz refresh rate monitor, because if you use a high refresh rate, and when I say high refresh rate, I'm referring to 240 and above, a high refresh rate monitor displays enough frames so that if you're running at a 2000 Hz polling rate on your mouse or a 4000 Hz polling rate, the amount of updates sent to your CPU will actually be viewed within those frames that the GPU and your display displays. While with a 1000 Hz polling rate and a, let's say, 144 or 165 Hz monitor, they simply don't produce enough frames and show frames fast enough to be able to show you more than those 1000 Hz. Now, with that out of the way, I want to talk to you a little bit about some mice that have been notoriously marketed as FPS mice, namely the Basilisk and the G502. Those are very brand recognizable and a lot of people use them, especially the G502. Now, I think that the marketing about them being FPS mice is kind of dog shit. Quite frankly, I think that heavy gaming mice, for FPS at least, is just complete trolling. And you're way better off using a GPX or a Viper V2 or a Death Adder V3, but I'll get to that later. The only benefits you really get from like a Viper or a Basilisk or a G502 is that you get the benefit of a firmer, more full palm contact feel and shape, and you get the extra side buttons. However, in most games, swapping, at least in most FPS games, swapping from your DPI button to like 1 or 2 or 3 can actually mean the difference between you getting a shot and dying completely, because you're taking time off you could have been using to aim with the mouse. That being said, it's also at least double the weight of your average lightweight FPS mouse like the GPX is. So that's also going to be a very major difference. I'd argue that a G502 or a Basilisk should actually be considered MOBA, MMO, or a work mouse. Now, the work mouse is obvious to anyone who's ever used any Logitech product with a free scroll wheel, because it's a free scroll wheel. I don't need to explain that one. That's very self-explanatory. But it's also because I'd argue that from a standpoint of needing to work, there's nothing more comfortable than being able to fully rest your hand on the mouse and just move it around the mouse pad like nothing else. And then obviously you can just rebind the buttons to whatever you want. Let's say you're editing, you could rebind the buttons in software to do something like that. Now, with that being said, what do I think is the golden standard for mice, right? I make all these claims like, oh, heavyweight mice are bad. I think the golden standard for mice is the G Pro Superlight, better known as the GPX. The Viper Ultimate, or the Viper V2 Pro. I only have the Ultimate, but it looks exactly the same as the Ultimate. Or the Death Adder V3 Pro. And those are, in my opinion, the golden standards for modern gaming mice with optimal weight and wireless tech for optimal aim potential, assuming you put in the work. And the reason why I say this is because the GPX has a very, very safe hand shape. It kind of also is almost full palm contact, if not actually full palm contact. And it's a very, very relaxed mouse with a little bit of a hump, so you can have basically any hand, any grip style without a problem. I used to rock the Viper Ultimate for a while because it would let me kind of use the bottom of my palm exclusively to hold on to the mouse, but I've just found that the hump on the GPX just feels better. But that's, again, that's personal preference. And let me tell you this, these days, every single, like, again, with the internals, right? The only difference in wireless mice these days and modern gaming mice is that whichever shape you prefer to have them in. That's what should matter. Not the weight of them. Well, I know that's a little bit contradictory, but as soon as you get into like the G Pro Superlight or the Viper V2 Pro, what should matter to you is their shape and their feel in the hand, not necessarily their weight, because they're all at such a low weight class that really they kind of feel the same. And the only thing you're going to notice a difference is their shape and the coating of the plastic. Now, you could go lower. Stuff like Starlight and Sonkönig does exist. However, those are so outrageously fucking expensive that I would not recommend buying them. Sure, the Sonkönig is only for fingertip grip, and it's 23 grams, but it's also 350 euros, assuming you can buy it from the first party. And the same with Superlight. They're outrageously expensive, and if you need to buy them from a third-party seller, like a scalper, you're going to be charged out the ass, and you're going to get screwed over by it. So that's it. That was my entire take, and I'll see you around. Bye.